Very good morning, students, and a warm welcome to the digital classroom of Science and Technology Part B. Dear students, in the last video lecture, I had discussed about the deleted portion of Science and Technology Part B. And I had told you, if you have any doubts, any confusions regarding the deleted portion of Science 2, we will once again discuss in the live session next week, next Monday, that is 27th of September. So you all are requested to please keep your doubts, your confusions, your queries in writing so that we can immediately discuss and I can immediately give you the clarifications of your doubts. Now students, today we are going to start with lesson number 2, life processes in living organisms. There are 2 chapters of life processes in living organisms. Lesson number 2 is the part 1 and lesson number 3 is the part 2. So in this lesson, we are going to study about the different life processes which continuously take place inside our body. Now students, you know that there are different systems in our body. These systems are made up of different organs. Organs are made up of tissues and tissues are made up of cell. And we also know that cell is the basic fundamental unit of any living organisms. So we need constant supply of energy inside our body to perform the different functions. And can you tell me from where do we get this energy? Yes, we get this energy from our meals, from our food, whatever we consume. It can be in the form of carbohydrates, fats, lipids, vitamins and minerals. And we had also studied in our lower classes that the mitochondria, which is present inside the cell, it synthesizes the energy from these nutrients which we consume as our diet. And for this, what do we need? We need the oxygen. Okay. So the oxygen is supplied to each and every cell of the body so that the energy can be produced to perform the different types of functions taking place inside our body. Now there are different systems, as you can see. The first one is the respiratory system. The second one is the urinary system or excretory system. Then the third one is the nervous system. And the last one, where you see the largest gland of our body, that is liver, intestine, okay, stomach. So that is the digestive system of our body. The students, we know that human beings and animals are heterotrophs. They cannot prepare their own food and thus they are dependent upon the plants because the plants are the autotrophs. They are the only organisms, living organisms present on the universe which can prepare their own food. So some of the food they utilize for themselves because even they have so many systems inside them and they also perform the different functions inside the body for which they need the energy. So they utilized some of the food for themselves and the remaining part of the food is stored in the various parts of the plants in the form of leaves, stems, roots. Okay. Now we consume all the fruits and vegetables from the plants and the energy obtained from these products of plants is used to perform the different functions inside our body. Now, this food consists of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. And from where do we obtain carbohydrates? As you can see on the screen, the sources of carbohydrates are milk products, that is dairy products, fruits, vegetables, legumes and lentils, chocolates, that is bakery products, and of course the dry fruits. Okay, now these are all the sources of carbohydrates, and we know that from 1 gram of carbohydrate we get 4 kilocalories of energy. So from 1 gram of carbohydrate we get 4 kilocalories of energy. Now next we are going to study how the energy production takes place inside our body. Now the dietary carbohydrates, the food which is in the form of carbohydrate, it is mainly used for the production of energy in the form of ATP. And I hope you all know the full form of ATP. Yes, it is adenosine triphosphate. Okay. Now, carbohydrates are form of glucose. So, the oxidation of glucose, we had studied oxidation. Oxidation means when oxygen is combined. So, here the oxidation of food, carbohydrates, glucose takes place and the energy is produced in the form of ATP. Now, this oxidation is called as cellular respiration, and it takes place in two processes or two types, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is not new for us. We had studied about it in the lower classes. When oxygen is utilized in the process of cellular respiration, it is called as aerobic respiration, and when it takes place in absence of oxygen, then it is called as anaerobic respiration. So first of all, we are going to start with the aerobic respiration, where the oxygen is utilized for the production of energy. Now this aerobic respiration takes place in 3 steps. The first one is glycolysis. The second one is tricarboxylic acid cycle, or it is also called as TCA. The third one is electron transfer chain reaction. Now we are going to study one by one all these 3 processes. Students, I just want to tell you that here in your 10th standard, the aerobic respiration is just superficial. But if you are interested in science, and after 10th standard, if you go for science in your FIJC, then you are going to study about all these 3 processes in detail. So let's start with the first step of aerobic respiration, that is glycolysis. Now glycolysis is made up of 2 words, glucose and lysis. Lysis means to break down. So here the glucose molecule is broken down into simple substances. See students, in science, especially in biology, I always tell you right from the lower classes that you should understand the meanings of the terminologies, right? If you understand the meaning, it will be very easy for you to remember, because you cannot just cram and remember the processes in science or biology. So it becomes very easy for you when you understand the meanings and then you try to remember it. So glycolysis, the breaking down of glucose is called as glycolysis. So here the glucose molecule breaks down into two molecules of pyruvic acid, right? As you can see on the slide, glucose, only one molecule is there. We had studied that if no number is written in front of the compound, then it is considered as one molecule, correct? And after the arrow, the product, you can see it, 2 pyruvic acid. That means one glucose molecule is broken down into 2 pyruvic acid. Okay, 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, and ATP, water, and NADH2 is also formed. Now this process takes place in the cytoplasm. Okay. Now the pyruvic acid which is formed during this process, that is the glycolysis, it is converted into acetyl coenzyme A, right? And 2 molecules of NADH2 and carbon dioxide are produced. So these are the products of glycolysis. And what was the reactant? Reactant was glucose. Now glucose is broken down first into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, and then this pyruvic acid gets converted into acetyl coenzyme A. Now students, just understand that these 3 processes, glycolysis, TCA cycle and ETC, that is electron transfer chain, these all take place one after another simultaneously. So the product which is formed in the first process is the raw material for the second process. Got it? So here in glycolysis, the raw material was glucose. The oxidation of glucose takes place and it is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. These 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, they are converted into acetyl coenzyme A. So the final product of glycolysis is acetyl coenzyme A. Now this acetyl coenzyme A is the raw material for the next process, that is tricarboxylic acid cycle. Got it? So here in glycolysis, the breakdown of glucose molecule takes place and the products we get is 2 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A, 2 molecules of NADH2 and 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. Then the second one is tricarboxylic acid cycle. Now actually this diagram I have just shown so that you can understand the whole cycle, but for you at present in 10th standard, there is no need to go in the depth of this cycle because this is the complete tricarboxylic acid cycle, but in your syllabus it is just superficial. Okay, you have to just remember that the product of glycolysis, that was, what was the final product? Acetyl coenzyme A, right? We have 2 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A. These enter inside the mitochondria. Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm, but this cycle takes place inside the mitochondria. Then the cyclic chains of reactions takes place inside the mitochondria, and the acetyl coenzyme A molecule is completely oxidized and is converted into carbon dioxide, water, NADH2 and FADH2. Got it? You can see NADH2 molecules can be seen. So NADH2, carbon dioxide, water and FADH2 are derived from this tricarboxylic acid cycle. The third one is electron transfer chain reaction. So, now in electron transfer chain reaction, or it is also called as ETC reaction, this also takes place inside the mitochondria. Now here the molecules of NADH2 and FADH2, these two are formed and they participate in these electron transfer chain reaction. Okay, we had seen that in TCA, FADH2 and NADH2 are formed. So now they participate in the ETC reaction, and from NADH2 we get 3 molecules of ATP, and from FADH2 we get 2 molecules of ATP during this electron transfer chain. And at the same time, the water molecules are also formed. Okay. So, finally, from one molecule of glucose, we get carbon dioxide, we get water and energy in the form of ATP. And thus, the complete oxidation of glucose molecule takes place. So, students, this is the mitochondria, and as I said that inside the mitochondria the tricarboxylic acid cycle takes place. Now just to remind you, because we had studied about the cell and the cell organelles, their function and structure in the lower classes. So mitochondria is made up of double membrane, and the outer membrane is porous and the inner membrane is having folds inside to increase the surface area of the inner membrane, and these folds are called as cristae. Now, if you remember, what is the other name for mitochondria? Yes, it is powerhouse, because the extra amount of ATP which is produced in the body is stored in the mitochondria, and as and when we require extra amount of energy, we take the ATP in the form of energy from the mitochondria. Thus, it is called as powerhouse of the cell. And the function of mitochondria is the same, to produce energy in the form of ATP, and at the same time it also synthesizes the carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, so that it can produce energy. So this was all about the tricarboxylic acid cycle. Okay, so here one molecule of glucose is completely oxidized, forming carbon dioxide, water and energy in the form of ATP. Students, 1 mark questions can be asked in the form of, write the full form of NADH2 and FADH2. These are the enzymes, and you have to remember the full form of both. NADH2 is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and FADH2 is flavin adenine dinucleotide. Okay, NADH2 nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, flavin adenine dinucleotide is FADH2. These are two very, very important enzymes which help in the complete oxidation of glucose in the aerobic respiration. So please remember these names: N for nicotinamide, A for adenine, D for dinucleotide. Similarly, FADH2, F flavin, A adenine, and D is for dinucleotide. So please try to remember the full forms of these two enzymes. Now students, as I told you that mitochondria is called as a powerhouse and ATP is called as the currency. It is called as energy currency, which you can utilize immediately, right? Now here the conversion of ATP into ADP is shown. Now when energy is required, the ATP, that is adenine triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate is converted into adenosine diphosphate, and when the phosphate bonds break, the great amount of energy is released. So this is how the conversion of ATP, see with near the ATP you can see the battery sign which is full, and on the product side ADP, the battery is having very little energy, right? So this itself shows that when ATP gets converted into ADP, a large amount of energy is released, right? Because of the breaking of the phosphate bonds. Now these phosphate bonds, when they break, they are having 3 phosphate bonds in ATP, and in ADP they are having only 2 phosphate bonds. So when these phosphate bonds they break, a large amount of energy is produced which can be utilized. That is why the ATP is called as energy currency, because immediately the energy can be utilized from ATP. Process of energy production through aerobic respiration and through anaerobic respiration. Now aerobic respiration we had already finished, and this is the flow chart for the energy production through aerobic respiration. Now here the lipids are first converted into fatty acids, and then they are converted into acetyl coenzyme A. Proteins are on the other hand converted into amino acids and then into acetyl coenzyme A. Carbohydrates, they undergo glycolysis. They are glucose molecules. They are first converted into pyruvic acid, and then they are converted into acetyl coenzyme A. And then when lipids, carbohydrates, proteins, all three are converted into acetyl coenzyme A, they further move to the Krebs cycle. Now from where this Krebs cycle has come, right? It is nothing but tricarboxylic acid cycle. So the other name for tricarboxylic acid cycle is Krebs cycle, because it was first discovered by the scientist Krebs, right? And then from the Krebs cycle or the tricarboxylic acid, through the electron transfer chain reaction or the ETC reactions, carbon dioxide, water and energy is produced. So this is the end, rather these are the end products of aerobic respiration of carbohydrates, proteins and fats. Okay, so if you remember this flow chart, students, it will be very easy for you to write the explanation. As I always tell you that biology is very easy because there are diagrams, there are flow charts, there are ray diagrams, there are tree diagrams. And when we remember these diagrams, tree diagrams, flow charts, it becomes very easy for us to remember. There is no need to cram the explanation. You have to just remember the diagram and labeling, and you can very well explain in your own words. So you have to understand and then you have to write. That is why I always tell you that remember the meaning of the terms. Remember the meaning of the processes like glycolysis. It is made up of two words, glucose, lysis, to break up. So here the glucose molecule breaks up into simple substances, and thus it is called as glycolysis. Okay. So students, science is very easy and biology is the easiest. That is my signature sentence I always tell my students. So students, with this we finish with the aerobic respiration, and in the next video lecture we are going to start with the anaerobic respiration. And as I always tell you students, please revise the lesson. Listen to the video again and again, because the more you revise, the more you can easily remember. So at least just go through the flow chart every now and then, so that it gets fixed in your brain, in your memory, and whenever required you can recollect the things which you have learned. Okay students, I hope you all are completing your notebooks side by side simultaneously. We had started with the correction of the notebooks, I and Poonam teacher, and we are going to continue it in the next week. So the students, those who have still not shown the notebooks, please see to it that you complete your notebooks, because very soon you will be getting the timetable for the first preliminary exam, first term exams. Prelims are quite far away, in the second term, sorry. So please start preparing for your first exams, first semester exams, and all the best students. Please take care of yourself, stay home and stay safe. Thank you.